And here's your moment of metal.
Hey, this is Rick and Lyle.
And today we're going to discuss thrash metal.
Yeah, so basically, a lot of people say, thrash metal was, got its start in the early 80s. There was another genre of music in the mid 70s, that ran through the early 80s and beyond. But during that time, there was a genre called the new wave of British heavy metal. And there were bands in the UK, obviously, Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, Venom, Sodom, Motorhead, Diamond Head. And, they were kind of pushing the boundaries a little bit as far as, metal went. And, a lot of the thrash metal bands, that were very successful, or even most thrash metal bands in general, all took influences from those bands and kind of created, for what thrash metal is today.
Yeah, and a lot of like Metallica, Exodus, all the bands that came up, the big four, yeah, they were all influenced by like the bands the bands you mentioned, kind of riding on the coattails of Judas Priest and Iron Maiden, and kind of like I know Gary Holt said, we just kind of changed the lyrics to like, from all these epic songs to like killing people and more extreme stuff like that. And Amp definitely made the music more heavy. I think one thing that separates thrash from what heavy metal was at that time is definitely the double bass drumming. That wasn't before. That kind of breaks up the monotony of the snare bass kind of thing, gives it more velocity, more energy. And I think I've heard Lars and Dave Lombardo both say they were influenced by Motorhead, the song Overkill. That was the first time they heard double bass played that way at that tempo used in a song. And the funny story is with Motorhead, with Overkill, was Phil Taylor, the drummer. He got a brand new kit and he was practicing, so he was just doing his double bass, and Lemmy and Fast Eddie Clark were in the hall just having a smoke, and they were listening to him. They said, "Hey, that's pretty good. Let's write a song around that." And then that's how you got Overkill and the double bass. But a lot of bands will say, "Yeah, Motorhead, Overkill. That was the song that influenced him to use double bass, which is prominent in thrash metal."
Yeah, you definitely hear it a lot, and it just took everything a step further, and and they did. You can hear the influences, even like if you listen to some Metallica songs, you'll definitely hear influences, even from just Black Sabbath riffs that they've kind of altered, and they've admitted to it. They're like, we take our influences, we don't rip anybody off, but we might have a riff that we really like, and we might use it in a song in our own way. So they always got their influences from those bands, and just did it their own thing.
The guitar sound, the power chord definitely came from Sabbath. That's a big thing in thrash metal. That chord you hear a lot, the speed picking, and also what you were saying, it was a brand new thing. So a lot of like John and Marcia Zazula over on the East Coast, they're the ones that told Metallica, come out to the East Coast, we'll record an album. And they got out there, and John and Marcia were like shopping it around to the majors, and all the major labels kept passing on it. So they said, screw it, we'll release it ourselves. And They created Megaforce Records, and they also signed Testament, Anthrax, I think Overkill as well, because Overkill is from New York and on the East Coast, or of course Metallica. I think there was a big show in New York. It was like Metallica, Anthrax, and one other, I think it was Raven. They were all one of the biggest shows ever for that kind of music. There was like 3,000 people were there. There were scouts there from major labels. Metallica got signed to Elektra Records that night. Raven, I don't know what record whether they got signed or not. Anthrax, it took a little longer, and then they finally, I think Anthrax was on Atlantic, I think.
Yeah, they were on a weird labable called Island for a while. Yeah, it was Island. What you were thinking of, except remember that, which was like an off-the-wall kind of like label at that time.
Yeah, I remember
for these bands.
I remember looking at that, because I had the vinyl. I remember Island record. That's right. You're right.
Yeah, and I had never heard that before. As far as the other bands or the other, more known record labels that were signing these bands. Yeah, that was just kind of one of the oddball.
Testament. I think they were on Atlantic. I think Atlantic signed Testament.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
that's
maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. You talked about the Johnny Zazula, because he was doing an interview on some show on YouTube. It was some metal channel. I can't remember. But anyway, he was talking to the host on there, and he was saying, talking about the Metallica thing, how they came out, all the way across country. He got the demo listen to however many songs were on there, which are all on Kill 'Em All, obviously, but the 5-6 song demo, and like you said, nobody else kind of giving them a chance. And he told everybody after he heard it, these guys are going to be big, and this was what, 1982, or was it before that maybe? Because I mean, Kill 'Em All came out in 83, correct?
Kill 'Em All was 83, I believe.
So it was a little bit before that, obviously, with the demo. But.
Yeah, the hell, 81, 82, because the first thing that Metallica did was Hit the Lights on the Metal Massacre compilation album that Brian Slagle put together.
Right.
And also what's funny, if you look at, I'm sure there's people out, it's a collector's item now. If you look on the back, Metallica's misspelled. There's 2 T's instead of just one on the back. And
I forgot about that.
Yep.
That's right. Yeah, go figure. Right?
But Lars said, he went down and showed Brian, Lars and James went to Brian with their little cassette, really poorly recorded. And I think I've heard Lars say that Brian did a really good job of not vomiting while he was listening to our shitty ass, recording of Hit the Lights. But he put us on the Metal Massacre, and that got the start for Metallica for, as far as having their music on something.
Yeah, kind of got everything going. And like you were saying too, excuse me, about the double bass and all that, the thrash metal bands really expanded on just guitar tone, there's the speed obviously, got fast, but not everything was fast. There was a lot of groove to the songs. There was definitely some heaviness, and then you had a lot of tempo changes. And, when it came to definitely, Slayer, Metallica, all those bands, I mean, Anthrax and Megadeth, I mean, the guitar soloing was always a huge part, of the genre, which they kind of took a step further, even though, Judas Priest and Iron Maiden, and all those British bands obviously all have, amazing guitar solos in their songs because they're just amazing musicians. But, the thrash metal band just got a little bit wilder and crazier with it and just made it just insane guitar soloing on top of just all the songs, it was really cool.
As far as, recording, I think when Slayer made Rain and Blood, Slayer were big fans of Venom, Merciful Fate, which used a lot of reverb, the echo kind of thing that you hear in those early metal recordings, and I think they were the ones that said, I think whoever their producer was for Rain and Blood said, let's, get rid of the reverb and just, have the sound just in your face. I think there was a producer guy, I can't remember his name, he said what they wanted to do was have the listener like a punching bag.
Right.
And just have, the music just pounding you, and of course Rain and Blood's one of the greatest albums ever from that genre, still holds up today. We've discussed this one already, so I'm going to go crazy about Rain and Blood, but definitely one of the greatest, thrash metal albums of all times.
Yeah, and obviously anyone who's listened to Metallica's early stuff, not to, talk too much about Metallica, but obviously they are who they are, but you can hear that obviously, Hit the Lights, and their early stuff on Kill 'Em All, but then, Ride the Lightning comes out. And then when you're talking about just punch you in the face, great songs on Ride the Lightning, but then Master of Puppets comes out. And, the first 2 songs, Battery and Master of Puppets, are just full of riffs that just smack you right in the head. They're so heavy, and just the groove of it, the way the song flows from heavy to slow to fast to melodic, is just everything thrash is meant to be, and just created just a, groundbreaking. Everybody had their own sound. Megadeth had their own, version of it, of their sound. Exodus had their own guitar tone and still do. They super distorted, very, crunchy, heavy. Slayer sounds like you hear these bands, you hear just a few notes from a certain band, and who it is just by the way, the guitar tone sounds, or just the way the music sounds. You can identify which band it is just by hearing a few notes.
That's also made it special. Back then, every band stood their ground. They had their own identity, not like today. There's just millions of bands that sound alike and just kind of muddies it down, But back then, everybody, like you said, everybody had their sound. You knew it.
Right.
As soon as you heard that tone, the guitar tone or the vocals, you knew exactly who that was.
Right.
So those bands, the early bands, definitely, the big 4 they always talk about. But of course, there's other bands besides the big 4: Testament, Overkill, even Death Angel. I thought was great back in the day. When I think Kirk Hammett of Metallica, he discovered them. He got them their record label. I think he got them their record deal too. He helped them with that.
The big 4 definitely stands out, and. Yeah, but the bands you mentioned are also just as worthy. There's been so much debate. When the big 4 happened, it was like, not everybody agreed with that 4. Of course, everyone's going to have their own picks and their own opinions. And this band should have been in there. This band could be in there.
Right.
Even like the band like Kreator. Kreator's one of those bands too that's been around a long time. Kreator's been around since the '80s, and they are still making amazing albums. To this day. I don't remember. Do you like, where's Kreator from? Because I always forget. Like I know them and I have their stuff, but I always forget like where.
Kreator's German band.
Okay, yeah. So I figured they weren't American, but
also another one, Celtic Frost from Switzerland. I believe they're from Switzerland. Another great band from them that started just huge influence. Not just thrash, but black metal and death metal bands will cite Celtic Frost for they were one of the pioneers. I think back then. I think Brian Slagle said it. Like when he started his Metal Blade records, people were sending him stuff in the mail, and he started hearing like Celtic Frost and Sodom and Kreator, and that's when he realized, hey, this just ain't, right here in the Bay Area.
Right.
It's everywhere. It's starting it's coming
it's kind of all over. Yeah, and people kind of forget that's a good point too, because people that know the genre, realize that it was big in the Bay Area, because that's where Metallica originated from. And it was all that, but it was like, thrash metal was huge in the Bay Area.
Yep, and everybody, like I said, we talked about their sounds and stuff. Of course, Metallica, everybody knows what happened in '91 when they made the Black Album. There was a lot of, I think that separated a lot of people. Everybody was waiting for, And Justice for All Part 2 or whatever. But, they were always a band that wasn't afraid to take chances, and of course that was the album that... financially and definitely shot him to superstardom. They all became just
right.
Like I think I heard Charlie Benanti, the drummer for Anthrax. It was like watching your big brother go off to college and come back, Bill Gates.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that's basically what happened.
Giant.
Even Megadeth, kind of did that in their own way. Weren't as successful. I don't know if they were trying to be. They have that album Risk. It's called Risk for a reason. If you've never heard it, it's definitely unlike any other Megadeth album you'll hear. And it was, people call it a failure and this or that. And Dave Mustaine's not really happy with it, but at the time he said he did it for a reason. And it just sounds very different, and it doesn't really sound like Megadeth, and people hate it. But it was just like, after making 3-4 albums of the same style of thrash with the same kind of formula to the songs, they want, every band wants to explore other areas and just, they want their talent just to show in other ways sometimes. You don't want to be one dimensional. So some bands try their thing. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. People are going to like what they like, though.
It's like, it's because the major labels too that the bands were on, like Testament and Exodus. The major labels were telling them, especially when the Black Album hit, the labels that had a heavy metal band, they're like, how do we make this heavy metal band like Metallica? Money, they're like, you got to do a ballad or something, which out of those bands, I have a lot of respect for Slayer because they stuck to their guns. They never compromised their sound.
Right.
I've heard late Dave Lombardo say, you need to like make a radio song. And they told him, hey, this is who we are. This is how we play, fuck off. We're going to keep doing our thing, which, throughout the 90s, when thrash metal was really suffering, grunge was coming up, Alice, I think Alice in Chains, Pearl Jam, all of that. That was the next thing.
Right.
Thrash was in a lull, kind of a lull. It was just, nobody was really making nothing good. But Slayer and also Pantera just flew the flag through the 90s.
Yeah, they never strayed. Yeah.
Never strayed. Never, let the,
Exodus too.
Down.
I mean, Exodus never... Same type of thing. They always stuck to thrash. People kind of shit on Slayer sometimes about, how Slayer never strayed or never got away from what they did. But that's, that's good and bad, I guess. Some people love it, like us, and some people get pissed at it, like, oh, well, it's every album sounds the same. But it does, but it doesn't. You got to listen. Listen to the songs and listen to the creativity that's involved. And Exodus is the same type of band where you know what you're going to get, but you're going to get the same old school thrash why you love that band, because they're going to keep doing what made them who they are.
Right. I think, I've heard Kerry King say Lars was doing an interview one time and referenced Slayer, like saying bands have painted themselves into a corner.
Yeah.
But what they do, they stick with what they do. And I've heard Kerry King say, I like my corner. It's the coolest corner I've ever been in, So,
what's he got to complain about at this point in his career?
Yeah.
They're still selling out shows and, they're filling arenas. So this is Rick and Lyle.
And we just got done discussing thrash metal.
And that was your moment of metal. Be sure to follow us on social media at Finance is the Other F Word and Rock On.